week's episode of Pokemon Generations, we officially enter Generation 2, the Gold and Silver era. And in this week's episode, they take a look at one of the biggest story elements from that game, the Lake of Rage, and the introduction of the Red Gyarados, which was the very first shiny Pokemon in the series. Not only that, but this week's episode also follows Lance, the Dragon Master from the Elite Four, taking on the nefarious Team Rocket, setting all of their Pokemon free, and allowing his Dragonite to kick all sorts of ass, and getting a little bit of help from the actual player of the game, the character that you play as in Gold and Silver. The only thing this episode really needed right here was more Red Gyarados. It was barely in this episode whatsoever, but this one was made up by the fact that Lance and his Dragonite were just so freaking awesome. Team Rocket in this episode was pretty damned goofy. They were about on par with Jessie and James from the long-running Pokemon anime series. Although, I love that one scene when they decide that they're going to confront Lance in this underground laboratory, and they have this ridiculous, swagger that they're walking with. It's kind of like if you look at that scene from Armageddon where they're getting ready to go onto the rocket, onto the shuttle, except here, it's just goofy and it just puts a big smile on your face. And it's all followed by Lance's Dragonite just completely destroying them. In fact, before that, I think my favorite scene from this episode was at the very beginning where Lance was actually breaking into this place and he forced his Dragonite to use what is either Thunder Punch or Mega Punch, and it just completely rips this wall to pieces. But the way that they animated the punch was just done with so much gusto and manliness. Even one of the leaders of this Team Rocket organization tries to take down Lance's Dragonite with a Weezing, and that battle pretty much goes as you would expect. I also love the fact that he gets to save all of the Electrode, which are actually powering the facility, and the Electrode are just pissed off. They just decide to electrocute everything in their wake, and pretty much all of the Team Rocket members. So it looks like the Red Gyarados is going to be able to survive in peace and live out in the wild, thanks to Lance the Dragon Master, and of course, the main character from Pokemon Gold and Silver. So, what's the rundown on this week's episode of Pokemon Generations? This one was another really great episode, which seemed to have a little bit more focus on the story. They really have to choose. Are they just going to try to do a lot of action? Are they going to try to cram that into every single episode? Or are they going to try and tell these short little stories, which, when they do the ones like they did in this week's episode, I think it works a lot better. Kind of like the episode we had earlier on, where Looker the Inspector was actually trying to find Giovanni. It seems like all of the episodes which involve Team Rocket seem to be the most interesting, and it makes me pine for them. I would love to see Team Rocket show up, if only for a cameo in Pokemon Sun and Moon. I think it would be fantastic. But the fact that we already have the Ether Foundation, not to mention Team Skull, and probably even a third faction, we already have way too many evil villainous teams in the next game. Still, I love Team Rocket. I'm very nostalgic for them. They're very simple villains, but they're so funny and over the top, and you really got to see a lot of that in this episode when they realized that they're actually being invaded. Just their overall reactions to that was really funny. I really like this a lot because this shows that Pokemon Generations can be a little different than the other Pokemon anime series, where it can be a little more mature, take itself a little more seriously, but it still doesn't lose some of the big humor from the series. I mean, it's a pretty humorous thing when you really think about it and you see what these monsters look like when they're fighting each other. Although Dragonite looked awesome in this episode when he was roasting all of those Team Rocket Pokemon with a massive Fire Blast attack. That looked awesome. Just really loved that right there. Lance really knows how to use a freaking Dragonite. Sweet semen of baby Jesus, get yourself a Dragonite. If you don't get that reference, I highly recommend looking up the awesome Dragonite video on YouTube. It is freaking hilarious. And after seeing this week's episode, it honestly makes a lot of sense. Get yourself a Dragonite. Overall, I'd have to say that my favorite episode of Pokemon Generations is still probably the very first episode, when you got to see the big adventure that Pikachu was going on through the various regions, although this one was very close. It had a lot more focus behind it. It actually felt like they were telling a really cool story. We got some awesome Pokemon battling moments, and we got even a few appearances from the red shiny Gyarados, which Back in the day when I was playing Gold and Silver and I saw that red Gyarados, I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. And I did think it was slightly demystified when they decided to add shinies to the game, but I'm not going to complain. Black Greninja looks awesome. There's a lot of other shinies that I really love. Freaking Mega Gengar, for crying out loud. Like, shiny Pokemon are great, and red Gyarados is what truly ushered in that era. And this was sort of like the perfect way to show that off in this week's episode of Pokemon Generations, which was pretty fantastic. Still keeping up its great production value, and it's definitely going to appeal to those who've been playing the Pokemon games, and even to some casual fans who just want to see some cool kick-ass Pokemon animation. So I'm going to give this week's episode right here a 4 out of 5. Another solid episode right here, although I would have liked a little more Pokemon battles and a little bit more from the red Gyarados, just to see it more in action. That being said, I think this is one of the better episodes of Pokemon Generations thus far. Since it has a very short running time, I just felt like this one did a good job of actually telling a short story. So, there it is. Check it out, Pokemon fans. But if any of you guys did watch the episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comment section below. Is this your favorite episode of Pokemon Generations? Do you have another favorite episode? Did you have a favorite scene from this one? What other stories do you want to see from Pokemon Generations? Please tell me in the comment section below. You guys are awesome! Thank you for watching this review. I really appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and please leave a comment. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!